Welcome back to the ones who finally chose themselves, the ones who stopped waiting for someone to meet them halfway, the ones who left the conversation without a goodbye and never looked back. Yes, you. I see you. And clearly, so does everyone else now because something changed, didn't it? Something shifted in your energy. You stopped reaching out, and suddenly the whole world started reaching for you. You stopped asking for bare minimum effort, and now they're checking on you like you're breaking news. You stopped defending your choices, and suddenly they're writing novels trying to understand your quiet. You disappeared, and they're having full panic attacks about where you are, who you're laughing with, what's on your mind, why they're not on your mind anymore. Let me break down what's actually going on here. They thought your effort was confirmation of their worth. They thought your messages, your availability, your constant presence, your need to be picked, they thought that was their evidence. They thought they were the destination and you were just another person hoping to arrive. But then you did something they never expected. You quit the game. You didn't write a manifesto. You didn't cause chaos. You didn't drop some theatrical exit speech. You just stopped. And that shattered their entire worldview because now they're stuck with a question they've spent years dodging. If I'm so irreplaceable, why did they leave without hesitation? If I'm so incredible, why aren't they begging to return? If I'm the prize I claim to be, why does their disappearance feel like the end of everything? See, here's the truth they're missing. Your pursuit wasn't about them at all. It was about you. You were pursuing the fantasy you created in your mind. You were pursuing resolution, affirmation, the dream of being wanted by someone who clearly wasn't worthy of you. But the second you stopped, the second you stared at that screen, that ignored text, that unbalanced connection, and thought, I'm finished here, that's when you reclaimed something they never thought you'd discover, yourself. And now you carry this presence they can't quite name, this calm, distant, unbreakable aura that shifts every space you occupy. You're not resentful, you're not wounded, you're not dropping passive-aggressive quotes online, you're just liberated. And Liberation is absolutely terrifying to people who are still trapped. They're spiraling because they believed you needed them. They built their entire identity around the assumption that you were the needy one, the emotional one, the one who felt too deeply. And now you've destroyed that narrative by showing you can exist. No, not just exist, flourish without them. You're not drowning in nostalgia. You're not sending drunk messages at 3 in the morning hoping for reconciliation. You're not even upset. You're just gone. And that absence screams louder than any words you could have spoken. It reverberates through their consciousness daily. They wake up with you in their thoughts. They fall asleep wondering about your world. They see your name and their breath catches because they understand. They understand they destroyed something priceless and it's never returning. You want the real truth about why they're unraveling? Because you cut off their supply. They were dependent on your focus, your investment, your desperation to be chosen by them. And now you've gone completely cold and they're experiencing severe withdrawal. Every time they post something, they're scanning to see if you noticed. Every time they're in public, they're searching crowds, praying you'll appear. Every time a notification arrives, there's that microsecond where they hope it's you. And when it isn't, something inside them withers because you're not just absent, you're indifferent. And indifference is unforgivable to people who believed they controlled you. You didn't just leave, you transcended the entire need for their presence. And that's what torments them endlessly. Let's explore what's happening in their reality right now, shall we? Because it's destruction. It's gorgeous, poetic, karmic destruction. They're hunting through your old exchanges, desperate to pinpoint when they lost you. They're rereading messages from ages ago, dissecting your words, searching for warnings they overlooked. Did they cross a line? Was there one defining moment? Or did you simply realize one morning they weren't worth your energy anymore? And that uncertainty is consuming them completely. Because if there was one moment they could repair it, they could apologize, gaslight, love bomb their way back inside. But if you simply outgrew them, if you just elevated beyond their frequency, there's nothing they can do. You can't bargain with someone who's already moved on. They're interrogating shared connections about you. Have they contacted you? What's their situation? Are they with someone new? And when those friends report you're thriving, better than thriving, genuinely radiant, glowing, completely fine, their heart sinks. Because that confirms you weren't destroyed by their absence. You weren't shattered. You weren't sitting by your device praying they'd return. You simply continued forward like they were a chapter you closed and never revisited. And for someone who assumed they were your entire narrative, that's devastating. That's complete ego annihilation. That's the awakening that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as significant as they convinced themselves they were. Maybe you were the real catch all along. Maybe you were the one being generous. Maybe losing you was their greatest regret, and now there's no reversing it. Here's what's actually cycling through their mind constantly. They're measuring everyone new against you. Every interaction feels empty because it's not you. Every smile feels manufactured because it's not your smile. Every connection attempt feels meaningless because they're understanding you can't substitute depth with temporary distraction. You can't replace authentic with easy access. And now they're trapped in this pattern where they keep searching for someone who recreates what you gave them, but nobody can. Because you weren't just another person, you were a reflection. You showed them their possibilities, their better version, the person they could have evolved into. And now that reflection vanished, and all they witness is reality. They're superficial, they're self-centered, they're terrified, and without you, they're completely ordinary. They assumed ignoring you would make you pursue harder. They assumed distance would make you grip tighter. They assumed manipulation would keep you attached. But you did something they never anticipated. You accepted their choice. You said, all right, you want distance? Take infinity. Enjoy the void. And now they're suffocating in that void. They're drowning in the silence they engineered. They wanted you to battle for them, but instead you battled for yourself. And that was the strategy they never predicted, because it wasn't designed to wound them or educate them. It was designed to liberate you, and liberation doesn't require vengeance. It doesn't require explanations. It doesn't require final statements. Liberation simply exits. And that departure haunts them more intensely than any confrontation ever could. You know what's truly twisted? They're not panicking because they miss you. They're panicking because they're recognizing you were the best they'll ever experience. And they discarded it for absolutely nothing, for pride, for alternatives, for the fantasy of something superior. And now they're standing in emptiness, pretending it's paradise. They're manufacturing happiness with people who don't understand them. They're faking chemistry with people who don't inspire them. They're accepting superficial everything because internally they know nobody will ever love them like you did. Nobody will ever perceive them like you did. Nobody will ever commit to them like you did. And the devastating part, they're the architect of this destruction. They can't blame you. They can't perform victimhood. They can only exist in the aftermath of their own decisions and question, what if I hadn't been so foolish? Let's address your silence directly, because it's not merely absence. It's not just your physical unavailability. No, your silence is a message. It's a proclamation. It's an undeniable truth they cannot escape. Every day without your contact is another day they face the fact that you don't need them. Every week that passes without your presence is another week they realize you're not returning. And that understanding, it's not instant, it's gradual, it's excruciating, it's a slow unraveling. Initially, they assume you're temporarily occupied. Then they assume you're testing them. Then they assume you're attempting jealousy. And then it strikes them. You're not testing anything. You're just finished. Your silence accomplishes something their words never achieved. It forces reflection. It makes them interrogate everything they believed about themselves. Because when you were present, pursuing, caring, attempting, they could dismiss their failures. They could maintain the illusion they were valuable. But now that you've vanished, now they're isolated with their consciousness. And those thoughts aren't kind. They're remembering how poorly they handled you. They're recalling the times you tried communicating and they invalidated you. They're remembering the moments you needed support and they were unavailable. They're seeing for the first time that they weren't the protagonist in this narrative. You were. And they were merely the challenge you conquered to discover yourself. And that reality is demolishing their entire self-concept. Here's what they refuse to acknowledge. Your silence possesses more strength than their words ever contained, because words can be manipulated, distorted, rationalized. But silence cannot be debated. Silence doesn't justify itself. Silence simply is. And in that existence, it forces everyone surrounding it to create meaning. And the meaning they're creating, it's absolutely terrifying. They're envisioning you joyful without them. They're envisioning you with someone superior. They're envisioning you living your ideal existence while they're stuck repeating patterns. And whether these visions are accurate doesn't matter, because in their perception, your silence validates their deepest anxieties. You don't need them. You don't miss them. You don't consider them. And that's more agonizing than any criticism you could have expressed. You're not discussing them publicly. You're not posting cryptic messages. You're not performing victim narratives on social platforms. And that's what's destroying them, because they're accustomed to people making spectacles when they depart. They're accustomed to emotional displays, theatrics, public breakdowns, desperate attention attempts. But you just evaporated like morning fog, like you never existed. And that's the ultimate demonstration of power, because it communicates you weren't significant enough to battle over. You weren't worth the energy required to resent you. You were simply a lesson absorbed and released. And for someone who requires feeling important, necessary, wanted, that's the most crushing realization possible. You didn't even invest enough to hate them. You just forgot them like a song you once enjoyed but never play anymore. They're monitoring your online presence obsessively now. Every update, every photo, every interaction, they're studying everything, hunting for evidence you're thinking about them. And when they discover nothing, when your existence appears complete, joyful, serene, when there's zero trace of them in your universe anymore, that's when genuine panic emerges, because it confirms you erased them, not just from your contacts, not just from your routine, but from your emotional memory. You cleaned house, you reset. And the version of you operating now, it doesn't contain their data anymore. They've been permanently deleted. No recovery folder, no saved version, no restoration possibility, just erased. And that permanence, that finality, it's the nightmare they never imagined facing because they always assumed you'd remain available, waiting, hopeful, prepared to accept them back whenever they decided to return. But you're not. And now they're understanding certain doors never reopen. Oh, and let's discuss whoever they're currently with, because that's where genuine torture exists. See, they assumed replacing you would be simple. They assumed the next person would erase memories. They assumed fresh energy would eliminate old emotions. But here's reality. Every single person they encounter now gets compared to you, and nobody measures up. They're on dates remembering how you would have responded to that moment. They're in conversations recognizing this person doesn't stimulate them like you did. They're intimate with someone new, feeling more hollow than when alone because chemistry cannot be fabricated, depth cannot be performed, and what you shared together, that was genuine, exceptional, irreplaceable, and they destroyed it. They're attempting to convince themselves they're happier currently. They're posting evidence, performing indifference, pretending their existence is magnificent. But you know what's interesting? Genuinely happy people don't require constant announcements. They don't require performing satisfaction for spectators. They simply live it. But them, they're performing. They're creating theater, hoping you're observing, hoping you're envious, hoping you're regretting your departure. But here's the revelation. You're not observing. You're not envious. You're not considering them whatsoever. And that apathy is the ultimate vindication because it proves you meant your decision when you left. You weren't bluffing. You weren't playing strategies. You were genuinely finished, and finished doesn't reverse. Finished doesn't compromise. Finished is absolute. The person they're currently with, they're a substitute, a diversion, a temporary solution to a permanent problem, and internally they recognize it. They know they're settling. They know this person doesn't create vitality like you did. They know conversations lack substance. Chemistry feels forced. Connection remains shallow. But they cannot admit it, because admission means acknowledging they lost you, acknowledging their greatest mistake, acknowledging their pride destroyed something magnificent. So instead, they pretend, they fabricate, they deceive themselves and everyone surrounding them. But at night, when silence comes, when distractions fade, they think about you. They wonder about your world. They replay memories. And they despise themselves for releasing you. Here's what devastates them most. You're not sitting heartbroken. You're not grieving them. You're not monitoring their profiles. You're out there living, radiating, transforming, becoming the version of yourself they'll never witness intimately. And eventually they'll see you with someone new, someone who respects you, someone who appreciates you, someone who doesn't manipulate because they're too grateful they found you. And on that day, their entire reality will crumble because that's when it becomes undeniable. That's when they realize you didn't just abandon them. You upgraded. You discovered better. You proved that leaving them was your best decision ever made. And that image, that reality, it'll haunt them eternally because they could have been that person. They possessed the opportunity and they wasted it. You want the ultimate paradox? They assumed you needed them more than they needed you. They assumed you were fortunate for receiving their attention. They assumed they were charitable by maintaining your presence. But now circumstances reversed. Now they're the ones hoping for messages. Now they're the ones questioning if chances remain. Now they're the ones feeling they lost something irretrievable. And you're simply existing, peacefully, powerfully, unbothered because you finally absorbed the lesson they refused teaching themselves. You cannot lose someone who wasn't your destiny. You can only lose someone blocking your path towards someone superior. And the moment you stopped pursuing them, that's when you started walking toward yourself. And yourself is the only person you required all along. Now let's discuss the moment they realize they cannot reclaim you, because that moment approaches. It might not be immediate, it might not be soon, but it's inevitable. Maybe it's when they finally abandon pride and contact you, and you don't acknowledge them. Maybe it's when they appear somewhere hoping for accidental meetings and you look past them like they're invisible. Maybe it's when they hear secondhand that you're content, flourishing, in love with your existence, and they realize they're excluded from that existence permanently. Whatever triggers it, the moment approaches when they comprehend you're not returning, and that moment will fracture something inside them that never completely heals. They'll attempt everything. They'll send midnight confession texts. They'll interact with ancient photos hoping you notice. They'll frequent places anticipating your presence. They'll exploit mutual connections for intelligence. They'll perform victim roles, transformation narratives. The person who finally understands now, they'll promise they've changed, improved, prepared for authentic love. And you know your response? Absolutely nothing, because you've already traveled that road. You've already granted opportunities. You've already believed promises, and you're not repeating it. Not because you're resentful, but because you're wise.